Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I just got finished listening to over an hour of Thought Crimes interview with Boyce Watkins. And I want to take some time to share my thoughts about that interview. First of all, I have to shout them out for conducting the interview, for getting Boyce Watkins on their channel, and for asking him some good questions. And also shout out to their audience for raising questions as well. Again, I only watched about an hour of it. The program was like 4 hours long. And I don't have that kind of time to sit down in one watching and see 4 hours worth of material. I may go back and watch the rest of it later. And then if necessary, I may do a follow-up to this video, a part 2 or whatever. It depends on how I feel. But I thought that they asked him some good questions, and they did get him on the program, so I have to give them their props for that. But one criticism that I have is I think that they were too deferential to him, and I think that that happens because of a couple of things. First of all, this guy is like a little celebrity. You know, he has a large channel. As you can see here, he has over 250,000 subscribers to his channel. And he's somebody that appears on like CNN and other news networks. So I think that some people may be a little bit intimidated by that, and they may feel like they have to treat this man with kid gloves and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, they go out of their way to be polite because they don't want the guy to basically hang up on them or in the program and stuff in the interview. So I get that and I understand that. One thing that I also thought about was this. I thought one problem that I had with the interview is that there were too many moments during that interview where instead of just asking him the questions and making him the focus of the discussion, the people over at Thought Crimes, they spend long periods of time like providing their extended commentary. And I understand it's their channel and they can do what they want with it. But if you're going to interview somebody, that person should be the subject of the interview. Like they should be the ones providing responses to your questions instead of you giving like long monologues where you're sharing your views. I mean, most people that tuned in, like myself, they didn't really come there necessarily to hear you speak. They came there to hear what Boyce Watkins had to say. So that's one criticism that I had about how the interview was conducted. And another thing is like all these pop culture references. You know, I just thought that like that interview could have been better if it was on a channel that was more like substantive instead of a channel that's like dedicated to all these pop culture things, these, you know, these popular trending topics and stuff like that. Instead of like a channel like that, if it would have been like on a more politically focused type of channel where you could really go into depth about the different political issues instead of like a superficial discussion of those issues, that would have been better. But, you know, with all that being said, you know, I think that it was still a good program. And, you know, again, shout out to Thought Crimes for getting the brother on there. So in terms of how Boyce Watkins addressed this whole Charles Wu controversy, I mean, I thought his responses were weak as hell, you know, overall. And I think that basically what he tried to do was turn the tables on black people and make it seem as if there was something wrong with black people for responding to the situation the way we did. You know, he talked about black people being overly emotional, being the only people that are concerned with insults and all that kind of stuff instead of dealing with business and stuff. And, you know, really, I think that that's stupid. You know, whenever these people say, well, black people are the only people that do X, Y, and Z, I mean, half of the time they're wrong. Because you know how the Jewish community, for instance, responds to what they consider to be anti-Semitism. They don't just sit back and say, well, we're just concerned about businesses and all that kind of stuff. No, they respond to them. They call out people that they disagree with by calling them anti-Semites, labeling them as anti-Semites. And also they make it difficult for those people to conduct business. They make it difficult for them, for instance, like In the case of Mel Gibson, he made some anti-Semitic statements, and for the longest time, he was blackballed for making those statements. So there are real consequences to insults. And Boyce Watkins is acting like, no other people respond to insults, like no other people deal with disrespect and respond to disrespect. And that's just straight out wrong. It's just flat out wrong. And this man is basically trying to guilt black people into just supporting him. He's trying to make black people seem like it's something wrong with us for criticizing for this man. So I think that that's ridiculous. And we see other examples of this, like, for instance, if someone has made anti-Semitic statements or they made statements just against the state of Israel, you will see the Jewish community, for instance, use their resources to make sure that that person is not elected as their political candidate, to put pressure on them and, support the opponent of that particular candidate. So there are consequences, man. I mean, you see it with like the LGBT community. If they see or hear like some offensive comments about their community, they take action and they make sure that there are consequences for disrespect. And this guy, Boyce Watkins, wants to act like it's so unique for black people to want to hold people like Charles Wu and Boyce Watkins accountable. It's not unique. And it's not some emotional reaction. At some point, dignity is more important than dollars in your pocket. And it seems like Boyce Watkins has forgotten that. It seems like his primary motivation is money over everything else. Because here you have a man, Charles Wu, that showed this man, Boyce Watkins, complete disrespect. Here you have Boyce Watkins presenting himself as some kind of economic scholar, presenting himself as some kind of thought leader in the black community, trying to talk about black empowerment and this and that. He constantly speaks out against racism and white supremacy. But here he has a damn bigot working for him, basically. Somebody that doesn't have much respect for him. Somebody who refers to him as a character, somebody that refers to him as his damn pitchman. But Boyce Watkins wants to make it seem like this guy, Wu, is somebody that he's in charge of in some respects. That he's the one paying Wu and this and that. That he's the one in a dominant position in that relationship. But this man has showed you utter disrespect. And you are still working with this man? That tells me that money is more important than anything. This man has disrespected you. Not only you as an individual, he has disrespected your community by just referring to the black community as some niche group. He talked about how you're just selling black people hopes and dreams. This man doesn't even have respect for the product that he's helping you market. He said that your product, he doesn't know if it's good or bad, meaning he's not even vouching for your product. He's just saying you're selling people hopes and dreams. And your response to that is to say that there's something wrong with black people because we're so emotional. We're more concerned with how people treat us. The fact that you would continue to do business with a man who disrespects you and disrespects your community proves that you're unfit to be in any kind of leadership position in the black community. It proves it. And I can't take you seriously as a black man, much less a black leader. And I mean, despite your claims to the contrary, the fact of the matter is you are a thought leader in the black community. You have over 250,000 subscribers. You're everywhere on the internet. You are a leader, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. And then this guy tried to brush aside this controversy by saying these clips were taken out of context. These clips were taken out of context. I mean, they weren't taken out of context. The man said what he said. He referred to you again as a pitchman. So anytime you get on here and you start talking about politics or talking about your views, That's the only word that comes to my mind. Pitchman. You know, I think about what this guy Wu said about you every time you have something to say. And, you know, for the most part, he's right when he says you're a pitchman, because you can't do a single video without pitching your products to black people. And you tie your pitch to this rhetoric about black economic empowerment, but at the end of the day, it's about you selling products. It's about you selling your black business school or some other product you're trying to push on black people. Nobody took those clips out of context. The clips spoke for themselves. And, you know, so that's that. I mean, he failed again miserably to really address this Wu controversy. And I wish, you know, the people on that program drilled down on that issue, because Boyce Watkins went off to talk about some other things, and I want to address those other things as well. You know, he actually said that black people are, you know, he referred to it as nigger thinking. You know, getting all worried about what people think about us, and, you know, we should be more concerned about getting money and stuff like that, basically. And I think that that's despicable, man. Some things, again, are more important than money. Dignity is more important than money. Self-respect is more important than money. Pride is more important than money. But to him, that doesn't matter. And, you know, that's the posture of somebody that's castrated politically. You know, castrated of their manhood and their self-respect. You know, so castrated to the point where despite this man disrespecting you to such a degree, you still have him on you're still paying this guy. And you want to try to make this distinction between him being an employee and him being a contractor, independent contractor. The fact of the matter is you are putting money into this man's pocket, a man who disrespected you. So how could any black man respect you? I mean, you often hear people complain about how the Asians come into the black communities, exploit the black community, show black people no respect. We remember that example of that store owner, this man who owned like a beauty supply shop, and he thought some black woman was trying to steal something from his shop. This is an Asian guy, and he's choking this black woman on the ground, choking her out because he thinks she may have stole some eyelashes. That's the kind of disrespect these people show us. And, you know, this guy, Charles Wu, is another example of this. You know, in this interview, Boyce Watkins talked about like how he immersed this guy in the black community, had this guy among his family members, took this guy to all these black venues and stuff like that, where this guy got to learn about black people and study us like you study a rat in a lab. Study us, or a guinea pig or something like that. And after studying this guinea pig, you put together your marketing strategy. He let this man in, just like a Trojan horse, into the black community. And this man completely disrespected him and the black community, and he's okay with that. He said he was mad for a minute. He had a conversation for a minute. But at the end of the day, he's still giving this man money because he says that he's one of the best marketers out here, that he did a good job. Can't you find a brother or a sister that could do just as good a job? I mean, if you're talking all this economic empowerment talk, why not manifest that by getting rid of this guy that disrespected you and your people and putting one of your own people in that position? I'm sure there are other people that can market products just as well as he can. Now, you know, I want to get into some other things that Boyce Watkins said, you know, but before I do that, I'll just say that overall, within that hour that I heard, Boyce Watkins did not defend his position well at all. I think that his attempt to defend himself was weak. And I think that basically it amounted to attacking black people by saying that black people overly emotional and we have nigger-like thinking because we're concerned about what people say about us instead of being worried about money and stuff like that. And I think that that's stupid for all the reasons I said before. And also, like, overall, I think that this man embodies the whole Booker T. Washington mentality. The only difference is, like, he talks all this white supremacy BS. But at the end of the day, he's taking the same position. Like, he's willing to tolerate disrespect. Just like Booker T was willing to tolerate being segregated and reduced to a second-class citizen with no voting rights, no basic human and civil rights. And also, I mean, this guy is completely apolitical. Like, he talks about this in this interview, talking about like how he doesn't really see how politics affects his life, and it doesn't matter who's in the White House or whatever. His life is the same. I mean, this guy is really ignorant when it comes to politics, and it's a damn shame that this man actually has all these people following him. I mean, this is the same fool that told black people that elections really don't matter during the campaign. And now that we have this Donald Trump in the White House, these same people like a Boyce Watkins want to complain about how Donald Trump is a racist. And I think that really this guy, Boyce Watkins, like, he's even downplaying like the racism of Trump, basically saying it has no impact on him other than having him see this stuff on Twitter. I mean, that is so ignorant, so absolutely absurd when you look at what this man is doing with respect to dealing with police brutality, how they're not aggressively pursuing cases against police brutality, cases where, they're not even using the Justice Department to enter consent decrees anymore. You have a situation also where you have a Trump administration that is trying to suppress black voters and, voting rights in this country. And I could go on and on. And this man wants you to actually believe that politics doesn't matter. It matters to those people who want to lose social benefits like Section 8, like food stamps. It matters to those people who want to go to college, but they have an administration, this Trump administration, that is trying to use the Justice Department to fight against affirmative action. Affirmative action which made it possible for people like you, Boyce, to get an education. But you want to say that who's in the White House doesn't matter? I mean, that is so ignorant, so absolutely ridiculous. All I can do is shake my head at that nonsense. This guy, it seems like Boyce Watkins had more insults for black people than he had for this guy, Charles Wu. His comments with respect to Charles Wu were polite compared to his comments about black people. He referred to black people as being stupid and childish for caring about what people think about them. So that's about it, man. I'm not going to go on and on. I don't want this to be redundant, but you all get the point, man. And I may watch the rest of the interview in doses and provide further commentary about the interview. From what I understand, they were saying that Yvette Carnell was watching the interview, and she made some comments in the chat. And they also mentioned that Tone Speaks was in the chat as well. So I didn't get a chance to hear them raise any questions. If they did get a chance to raise questions, please let me know, because I watched till the 1 hour and 50-minute mark. So if you can let me know if they actually had a chance to ask Boyce Watkins some questions, I would appreciate it, so I could just go directly to those sections. But anyway, tell me what y'all think. Did y'all watch the interview? If so, what did you think about it? Please rate, comment, and subscribe. And before I go, instead of me just voicing my displeasure with this Boyce Watkins, I'm going to do what I think a lot of people should do, and that's just unsubscribe. I mean, why be subscribed to a man who doesn't have enough respect for himself to take a stand against this guy, Charles Wu? Why is he still doing business with him? I mean, why follow somebody who's just a pitchman, somebody who is just there to sell some products, somebody that has no problem being viewed as a character, somebody that, you know, is selling people hopes and dreams, man, instead of dealing with the nitty-gritty reality of politics and stuff. So I'm just going to do what a lot of other people do. Again, that's unsubscribe. And with that being said, peace and blessings to each and every one of you. So I want to address this issue of leadership before I close out this video. So Boyce Watkins basically said that he doesn't put much stock in black leadership. You know, he talked about how he doesn't want to be placed on a pedestal and this and that. He doesn't consider himself a leader. And for the reasons that I said before, he's a leader whether he wants to be one or not. And as far as leadership is concerned, you need leadership in order to affect change. You need to have organization. When you have chaos, when you have an every man for himself type of situation, you can't progress as a people. You can't move forward as a people without organization and mobilization, and that requires leadership. You know, we see it every time. You know, nations that are strong and powerful have strong leadership. Communities that are strong and powerful have strong leadership. Anybody telling you that we don't need black leadership, these are people that you don't need to be listening to. So we need leadership, but it's about the quality of that leadership. What we don't need is people like a Boyce Watkins leading us anywhere, because he's proven himself unfit time and time again for being a leader. You know, these people that want to tell you politics don't matter, they're not fit for leadership. These people that aren't leading any kind of demonstrations or any kind of organizations, these people who are just out for self, they're not worthy of being leaders. These people who just sell hopes and dreams instead of producing concrete, measurable, tangible results and progress, those people are not fit for leadership. So the question is not whether or not black people need leadership. We need leadership. The question is the quality of the leadership. The question is the nature of the leadership. These online people should not be viewed as leaders. They need to be overthrown. It's time for regime change in the black community. That's what it's time for. It's time for people like a hustling ass Boyce Watkins to be gone. It's time for people like a Tariq Nasheed to be removed from positions of leadership. I mean, these are people who acknowledge that they are not leaders, who don't even want to be leaders. So why are we letting them lead us anywhere? Why are we doing that? So that's the question, man. And Boyce Watkins and these other people that claim that they're not leaders, they don't want to be considered leaders because they don't want anyone holding them accountable. They don't want anyone putting their feet to the fire. That's why they disclaim leadership. They don't want you to question them. That's why they disclaim leadership. And if they don't want to be leaders, if they hate being leaders so much, then it's time for us to get rid of them as leaders. It's time for us to stop following these clowns.